I'm going to go through one more example of plotting points on a graph, and we will spend some time in class on this as well. But you'll notice here that we want to plot these points on the graph. Okay, so I have an x and a y, and we're going to put in what what the point is, and so that's going to be using the x and the y. So this one is 4, 12. Okay, this one here we have two negatives, so we're going to have -3, -13. This one here is 12, 5. This one over here is 0, -8. And finally, we have -9, 7. Okay, these are our 5 points, and we want to plot out where these points are. And I'm going to do it in a somewhat, I'm going to do it in a bit of a different graph here than we saw prior, okay, in the previous one, because you'll notice that these numbers are a little bit bigger than the previous ones. Okay, so these numbers were all 5 and under, and so they fit on a graph that was 7 by 7, went up to 7 and -7. These numbers here go up to -13 and +12. So that tells us that we actually need a bit of a bigger graph. Okay. Now, one thing we could do is we could take this graph and we could add more rows to it and make it a little bit bigger, or we can take the same graph and we can just change the numbers. So instead of going up by ones, I'm going to go up by twos. Okay, so you'll notice here I've already labeled it. Okay, so we started at 0. This then is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Now, I didn't write out the ones in between because I don't need to fill up this and make it as messy as possible. We all know that halfway between 0 and 4 is 2. Okay, so if I put a 4 here, we know that one has to be 2. And then this one has to be 6, and so on and so forth, both with our positives and our negatives. Now, I also did red as negative just to kind of throw a little bit of a different color in there to make it look a little different. That you don't need to do. If I was doing this on paper and pencil, it would all be in black. So that's just something a little bit different. When we put in our axis, I just wanted to mention this as well. Axis always have an arrow at the end. So notice that little arrow at the end on both sides. That tells us that this graph continues going on and on and on forever. Even though we don't need it, we want to show that the graph keeps going on and on. So we put the little arrows on there, and then we label this as X and label this one as Y. We do that every single time that we draw out a graph. All right, so now let's plot our points. Now, again, I'm going to draw a dot. This time I'm going to use typing to represent the point, but it works out the same way as well. Let's look at 4, 12. Well, 4 is our x, so we're going to follow the x, and here is 4. And 12 on the y is right here. Okay, there's our 12. So we're going to have the point right here. Now, again, we're going to make sure that we label it. I'm just going to change my font size a little bit so it's a little bit smaller. And so this is the point 4, 12. Now I'm going to label it using Kami, okay, but you can always just write it in as well with pen. Okay, that totally works. That's the point 412. We should recognize that if it's all labeled properly, but I still want you to label in every single point that you do. I want you to label it with the coordinate point that we're given. Okay, so that's 412. That one's nicely on the lines. That's really sweet. -3, -13. Well, if we look at the negatives on the x side here, so these are the negatives on the x side here, we have a -2 and a -4. We don't have a -3. So our line is, or our point is actually going to be between the two lines. It's going to be in the middle. Just like the -13, we have -12, -14 is here. It's going to be down there. It's going to be right in the middle. So we're actually going to put the point right in the middle and not on the lines, which is okay. Okay, we can definitely do that. We can write in our point in the middle. Okay, it doesn't have to be on the line, but again, it's going to be important in this case here that we write in what the point is. In this case here, it's -3, -13, because if it's not on the line, it's tougher for me to know if were you a little bit off, were you a little bit messy, where is that exact point? Okay, so writing in the point tells us exactly where it is and gives us that idea. All right, 12, -5. Let's put that one in there. We'll do this one in yellow. Start with this, okay? 12 is right here. Okay, there's our 12 line, that's on the x's. -5 is here. Again, this is an odd number, so it's in the middle. So it's going to be on this line, but it's going to be halfway between the -4 and the -6. Okay, so it's going to be halfway in between. And again, we type that in so we know exactly where it is. because we want to make sure that everybody who sees this graph knows which point that is and where is that point. So that's why we write in our coordinate point as well, even though we can kind of see somewhat of where that is. 0, -8. Well, 0 on the x, again, right here. -8, right here. So this point is going to actually be right on that line. I'm going to actually cover over my -8. Whoops. That's okay. We'll all survive. And we plot in, we put our value in, which is 0, -8, so we all know which point that is. What is the exact address of that point? Even though we can see roughly where it is, and that's good that we can see, we need to make sure that we plot our values in there. Last one, -9, 7. Let's get a different color yet, we'll do purple. -9 on the x is right, so this is -10, this is -8, so right in the middle there. +7 is up here. Again, they're both in between, so our point that we plot is right there. There we go, there's our point. And we're going to then, again, we continue to do this every single time. -9, 7. We always write in what that value is. Okay, always write in what that value is so that anybody that looks at your graph can see which points you have. I want you to work on question number 3. It's plotting points. Again, like I said, we will take some time in class to go over this as well, but I want you to start by looking at question number 3.